Dude, you got to get a Mac.
I know. It's honestly time.
You just can't mid curve it. You either need to go like Linux or Mac. There's no fucking. You see PewDiePie's on Linux now?
I did. I did.
Dude, that's sick.
He honestly makes every right play um like 6 months to 2 years before everyone else realizes what the right play is.
Yeah, except for like moving to Japan.
Even still, like I think Japan is one of those countries that at least carries its own unique manifest destiny. Is he like a permanent resident there?
I think so. He has like a house, like he lives there.
Okay. Well, that's just kind of, that might just be like a aristocratic thing where he has kind of like a
No, I think he uprooted. I think that was like an arc of his. But it's just like they're both Swedish, you know? Like
yeah.
go back to Sweden. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, no, truly. They have like the highest standard of living.
Like ever.
Yeah. No, we can save him. Give us 2 years.
Felix. Well, he was an engineer before um he was PewDiePie.
Yeah, he's ahead of the curve in
Were
every
you a
regard.
PewDiePie guy?
No, but I do remember he was first viral off of the Amnesia series,
Mm-hmm.
if I
It's the
remember.
guy with the big fucking mouth, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That like survival horror
Mm-hmm.
game. So super fascinating stuff that he did all of that and then like pivoted because he's not the first generationally viral YouTuber.
Correct.
There were a lot of super famous viral YouTubers like that came 10 years before him,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them kind of ended up missing the boat. He was the only one that knew um, when to make meaningful pivots
Yes,
in his
I agree.
career, it seems like, right?
Yep.
Where people kind of like now respect him as just,
Mm-hmm.
like a person. And if he never did anything again, he would be okay, which is like really, really, really challenging to do. There
Yes.
was a tweet literally right before I was trying to fix all my computer stuff that I saw where it was like one of the, if not the most difficult traits that you have to develop is being able to walk away from the casino. Like
Yeah.
really being
Bars.
able to walk away from
Yeah.
wearing golden handcuffs.
Yeah. Well, PewDiePie strikes me like, to my understanding, I mean, he's not public with it, but like when he was top of YouTube, that was also like peak AdSense. That was
Mhm.
before the adpocalypse. So he was making like multiple six figures a month just from YouTube AdSense. That was before they were like kicking people off and shit. And knowing like just the type of character he seems like, I'm sure he just fucking stashed all of it because he was with
Mhm.
what's her name, Martia, and they were planning on having kids forever. So I assume he put like a couple $1,000,000 in the bank and gave it to like literally his bank advisor and was like, make this grow. And that's that. I'm sure he's like set, like his kids are set. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was like a big Minecraft YouTuber guy. Fucking
Mhm.
loved Minecraft. And sometimes like out of curiosity, I'll go like check on like my favorite Minecraft YouTubers from back in the day, and they're like still doing like the thing, and they're like old, and they get like 3,000 views where they used to get like millions, and it's
Yep.
like it's crazy, dude. Like it's just nuts. It's the hedonic treadmill of a sense, but it's I mean you see that with everyone, man. Like it's something I try to talk about a lot on like if you're if there's entrepreneurial types and there's not entrepreneurial types, and you don't need to be an entrepreneurial type to make money, and the alternative isn't just high career path. However, if you're an entrepreneurial type and that's the direction you're going to go, you need to understand leverage, because if you don't, then like the bills come every month, and so like the difference between someone like PewDiePie, it seems like, is he has that entrepreneurial bone where he can think long distance and he can see different like interwoven mechanisms of like how are we going to do this thing, whereas like the people, it's really like MRR focused guys I find who are like, I made like 82 grand this month, And it's like, okay, but you might not next month. And like, you might not the month after that. And you definitely won't 2 years from now if you're just doing the exact same thing. Like, there needs to be a progression of growth. The best person I saw who did it was Dan Coe, because Dan Coe made a shit ton of money from his personal brand, stashed it all, and then rolled it into Cortex. And he like hired like 3 multi 6-figure devs off the rip and was like, let's fucking build this thing, man. Like, and he would always say, because I remember listening to a podcast, like a smaller one, where he was a guest, and someone was asking him like how much money he made, and he was like, a fuck ton. And they're like, well, how much is your living expenses? And he's like, I think it was like 20 grand or something. And they're like, why? And he's like, for the next thing, like I'm fucking building. And that's like, yeah, main leverage point. So yeah, it's weird, man. We're in a weird era of business.
Yeah, we are, but they're extremely fascinating case studies, aren't they? Like at PewDiePie too, especially. Who would have guessed if we were talking about from 15 years ago that the guy that was doing like bro fist and like, you know, it was like so cringe, you know, for that era of time, was gonna have like a family, you know, and has like full financial freedom and autonomy, to basically be able to do essentially whatever he wants. And to your point about like Dan Coe too, like that's kind of like the dream, I think, of like those true kind of like auteur type of entrepreneurs, right? Where like he can invest everything mentally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually into this Cortex project because he doesn't fucking need it to work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if it just is a disaster and it blows out in like spectacular fashion, and it like it doesn't matter. He's not fucked because he was responsible with and had enough, you know, that delayed gratification bone in his body and long-term planning that he can be kind of like his own Medici family in a way, right? Like he can invest in his own art and do that over and over again. Like if Cortex isn't the thing that ends up working, he'll move on to another project that might take 12 to 18 months. That will also require multi 6-figure devs to be in the trenches to build out. And once you've made one thing successful, especially something as challenging as a personal brand, you just know what it takes to win now, like in anything. You know what I mean?
Well, your baseline raises, right? That's the biggest thing I've seen with like entrepreneurs in this space is like, because people, you know, it's like when successful people tell you like, you know, money isn't the root of all happiness. And it's like, but you needed to get money to get to that point, and they always leave that part out. You know, Naval has like his great quote, which is like, money solves money problems, and once you solve the money problems, you can work on to the bigger problems. Like everybody who preaches like money doesn't solve for happiness, like they weren't saying that when they were broke. And so it's kind of like it's in the same lens as that, where like, you know, like especially in this weird era of like young entrepreneurship, right? We're just surrounded by endless like young people making a lot of money comparatively. And most of those that I see are in some sort of arbitrage opportunity. It's like they are exposing a delta of something. Like there is a way higher demand than there is supply for something, right? So like that was drop shipping in 2016. That was social media marketing agencies in 2017. That was Facebook ads in 2018. Now it's like, you know, like AI agents and stuff. But I always say like there's 2 paths. Well, we talk about this all the time, right? With like, you're either a builder or you're like a doer or like a liver. There's like 2 types of entrepreneurs: lifestyle entrepreneur, builder entrepreneur. Like when I'm working with clients, right? It's like they're either at 25K a month and they want to get to 30, maybe 40K with half the amount of time, and they read 4-hour work week when they were like fucking 24. And like, so they're in the process of delegation for the sake of buying their time back. And then the other entrepreneur is like at 30K a month, wants to get to 200K a month, wants to build for equity, maybe wants to do an exit, maybe wants to roll into some sort of play. And like and so when you take these young kids, I'm curious to like where you're at with this and kind of like what you're planning for the future, because I think it only recently shifted for you, where like there's two paths. There's either, say, like these kids that are making like, I don't know, fucking 40K a month from like TikTok shop, right? Or whatever. And they're like 24 to 32 maybe, which is like still young, right? You either build the nest egg and live way below your means, and like you stash $1 million in the bank after 3 to 5 years, and you let that grow, and by the time, 6-7 years in, your living expenses are covered times two, and right, like you're at the point where you can go fuck off on a beach or you can build something new. Or you're a chronic builder and you understand that like you could put 10K a month into a investment account and make 6% back on that, or you can put that into Facebook and make 3.7x on that. And like both are like, neither are risky, it's because there's always the like opportunity cost there, right? Where like if you're making 40 grand a month and you're a builder, stashing that in an investment account is actually a significantly riskier play, because it's like you have an 80% chance of that being successful, versus like this, you have like a 20% chance of it being successful the first time, and then 30% the second time, and then 40% the third time, and after 10 years, so, and like it's huge in our space, right? It's like people really shit on, like they hate like Dave Ramsey, and they hate these like old like be smart with your money guys, but so many of them, it's like, okay, this isn't going to last forever, and do you want to build something bigger? Do you want to work on your leadership skills? Do you want to like run a fucking company? Do you want to hire? Do you want to delegate? Or do you want to just put it somewhere and fucking let it grow for like a couple years? It's not like this wait till you're 60 and retire. It's like, just fucking like get your living expenses of $4 grand a month, stash 30 in a month, fucking 2 years, like you're set. I see those like the only two real paths. Anything else is like mid curving it.
Yes. I mean, I completely agree wholeheartedly. This is why we live in kind of like the greatest time ever, is because you can legitimately, sincerely accrue generational wealth within a relatively short period of time, just by virtue of how many vehicles and ventures and opportunities exist out there. To your point, like what you were saying in the very beginning, right? Like, even if it's those arbitrage delta opportunities that like this might last 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, something like that. But that's enough time to like make some serious cash. And then to your point, even if you put it all like in something as like ludicrously basic as like treasury bonds that have like a 9% return when they mature in like a year, like that's like enough if you made out with like 7 figures, which is happening. That's literally happening like in our space. It's the thing that you said in the very, very beginning, right? Like the hedonic treadmill. That's where a lot of people get stuck. You make 82K really, really quickly, and there's something in your body, in your being, that's like, dude, I need to fucking blow all of this like now. You know? And there's just some sort of like, I don't know what it is, a karmic fire that exists within you.
I think it's like a Freudian thing. I think it's like wanting to prove the father.
Yes, exactly. Right. Like, yeah, you sacrifice maybe, let's say, 3 to 6 months, or maybe in your mind's eye, years to like build something, and you're like, oh, I was a fucking goober in high school or in college.
Well, that's right. There's also that interesting dynamic where like a lot of young entrepreneurs, like I can speak for myself on this, like didn't get to have a childhood. A lot of really successful entrepreneurs had to be responsible early. They had to take dominion early. So they let go of childhood wonder under the guise of like victim mentality, right? So at the age of like 14, 15, they started taking like, if no one's coming to save me, I'm on my own. I got to start like building this thing. And you lose that childlike curiosity. And so what you see is like a lot of these guys who are like 22 to 26, they want to make money so they can like order a pizza with their older brother and
Yeah,
play
they want to do
Black Ops
Macaulay
1.
Culkin scene in Home
Yes.
Alone in the
Yes.
hotel, right? Like they want
Yes.
to jump on the bed, order
Yes.
pizza, and watch like the movies that they were allowed to
Yes.
watch.
Dude, it's so real, but they'd be called an incel for doing that. So instead they like go to the clubs and like buy jewelry, but they really want to buy like Osiris shoes and like the you know, get like diamond camo.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. So
They wanna
I
buy
think there's a
time.
lot of and that's why like you said, like they don't, it's not like they get the money and then consciously go spend it. It's almost like there's this force field, and it's usually hidden under the guise of like, and this is something that I really I think is really important for us and just for the future, is like a lot of them will say, you know, like get it out of your system first, right? And something that you and I have identified is like you can truly internalize the lesson mentally. Like you can fully feel the psychic weight of loss without losing it physically if you lose it mentally, and vice versa, right? Like you can psychically feel the win, right? Like that's literally, you know, you can get woo woo and say that's like manifestation or law of attraction, but it's real. And so I think it's so important. And I also think it's important because like there's a lot of like pessimism, as there should be. Dude, I wrote a fucking post on this for a client some time ago, and it was like the medium homeowner in like 1978 was like 27, and in 2025 it was like 56. It was some fucking ridiculous statistic, like for first time home owners, like insane statistic. But like your grandparents couldn't fucking print money on the internet, dude. Like, what are we talking about here? And it's so crazy to see just like this pervasive pessimism amongst people on like Gen Z's never going to be able to buy a house. It's like Gen Z's going to be able to buy a fucking city, dude. Like Praxis was trying to buy Greenland. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, but like you said, it's having that like hedonic treadmill, but it's really just understanding like what game we're playing here. Like you need to just understand what's happening here. Like they're printing trillions of dollars. Like go get some of that and then fucking stash it somewhere that's not like a fucking fiat that's like lost 93% of its
appreciable asset.
Right. Like a business or real estate or et cetera, you know,
land. Or any other. Yes. So like the opportunities are boundless if you just choose to accept and see them.
Yes.
Right. And it's like so many of the people that, you know, we kind of talk to that are close collaborators in our circle, like what Nick Rogers was doing with Launch Socials. You know, they identified an opportunity. I'm not sure how long they've been incorporated, but I think it's been 2.5 years, 3 years or something like that. Right. And you look at where the smart money's going and where the brightest minds in our space are always talking about being one of one, authenticity, documenting the hero's journey, creating a personal brand that is based off of genuinely expressing exactly where you are, where you have been, and where you're intending to go, the skill sets that you're accumulating along the way, the problems that you intend to solve, the intentions that you have. And it all seems so simple, so straightforward, that you try to convince yourself it can't be this easy or this simple, right?
Yep.
And that's where 90%, 95%, 98% of people eliminate themselves from the game in the first place, is because they think that it's still this boomer paradigm from the mid 20th century, which is you need to have a prestigious career that is going to make you a ton of money over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, like what a lot of our parents tried to instill in us, like if you can't be a doctor, be a lawyer, and if you can't be a lawyer, be an engineer, and so on and so forth, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what they were raised with. Like, you can make 150, 200, 300, 400K if you just sacrifice 4 to 8 to 10 years of your life going
Mm-hmm.
through advanced education institutions and grad school, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. But as we've come to realize, as Zoomers and Zillennials
Mm-hmm.
of our generation, that everyone from their early to mid 30s to the kids that are coming into like their late teens now are that it, like that pathway is not as consistently reliable as it used
Right.
to be. A college degree is not as prestigious as it used to be.
Right.
It's and colleges are letting in students that they know are not even going to be able to graduate and find gainful employment and
Mm-hmm.
upward mobility because they're interested in just getting your money from student loan.
Yeah, they're a business.
They're a business,
Mm-hmm.
which is like not what educational institutions should, be like
Well, dude, it's crazy.
prioritizing.
It's like I was telling you like last week. It's so crazy. I think I saw it in a tweet, and it's like the fact that when you're running an info product business, it's you need to have such like a clear like 30-day money back guarantee refund policy, and it's like really unethical if you like skate around it.
Yeah.
Where it's like colleges are like you need to pay and then you need to pay 3 more years to even
Yes.
get the thing
Yeah.
with zero guarantee that anything will come from it on the other end. Like quite
Right.
literally, if you graduate college with a
Your
fucking
underwater basket weaving,
yeah, you can't like call the fucking FDA or the FTC on fucking whatever and be like, hey man, what the hell? Like it's just it's so okay. So question for you, kind of like a fractal question, but I know you'll be able to get like the gist of it. Is like, okay, so what you're saying is like the American dream's dead, basically, which is true, and there needs
I'll
to
say
be
the old American dream is dead.
yes,
Yeah.
I agree that this traditional idea, because it was very reliant on the institution, right, and that is no longer reliable. So, in order for you to come to this conclusion that you and I, many others in our space, has had on like the need for self-reliance and the opportunity that's out there on your own, you need to have this kind of like red pill awakening, right? You need to fundamentally distrust the system. You can't have both. And so that's why most people like us in our space go through their like conspiracy phase, for example, right? Like everybody's out to get them. So the two-parter question, I guess, is like maybe three is like, first, do you need to go through like the torture that like you and I and others have gone through on like that, like just fucking sitting in your room staring at your ceiling, like nobody's gonna like you just like you need to fucking dig until it makes sense, and you kind of need to like left curve, mid curve, right curve it, where where it's like you go from like it's all fake and bullshit anyways to like mid curve it where there's like these elites sitting around like a mahogany wood table like controlling everything, and then right curve is like, oh, actually, like, does it need to be torturous? Does it need to come from internal? Can it come from external, in the sense of like, I want to you think like a 16-year-old that like watches Taxi Driver and like for the first time like in the 70s and is like, yeah. I'm being a fucking anarchist, right? Or like the modern equivalent of that would be like take like a quote like normal kid who's like, parents were like, go be a doctor, lawyer, whatever, and they come across like some tape clips and join like Hustlers University and like do that whole thing for a year, but at the end of it, like they undoctrinate themselves from that. Like, can it come from external, or does it have to come from internal? Does it have to be suffering? And then like, where does that go from here? Like, where does 5, 10, 20 years where like, just generation by generation, like this idea of like go to school, get a job, like the trust for the institutions is gone, and it's kind of like we're back to almost like pre-industrialization days where it's like no, you can't go to college, get a job that's not useful for propelling society forward. You can't get an office job that's just like numbers hitting quota. Like, you need to be useful, because that's like our awakening. Our awakening is like, we can't rely on the system, but like people who rely on the system aren't focused on making impact. They're focused on like riding the system. Like, they kind of get like given the money and then they like give it back to like consumption, right? Whereas like people like us is like, go solve a problem and get paid in proportion to it, whether that's fucking potato farming or whether that's like fucking Palantir, you know, like, it doesn't matter. So do you think it's going to be like this progression thing? And then like, how do you think people can come to that conclusion in the first place?
I think this is kind of like interesting, and not to get too like woo woo esoteric, ancient like mystical practices of self-actualization and awakening and self-awareness, but um, through the principle of kind of like the external world is a reflection of our interior world, you're basically asking the question of kind of like, what really did come first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the answer is, on an individual case by case basis, your so-called awakening can really happen either way. It can happen through just a constant ruminating, brooding internal reflection of like, wait, is this all fake bullshit? Like, I'm keep watching these TikToks of these project managers that like are creating shareholder value but aren't doing anything, and they're like making 80 to 90K, and isn't that like just a massive fucking 2008 housing crisis bubble that's eventually gonna like burst? And that's the suffering that you're kind of like talking about.
Yeah.
And that is one way to get there. But I truly, truly believe that it can be as simple as like flicking on a light switch. Once you register like what's happening and you break it down to brass tacks, which is what the thing that you mentioned at the very, very end of what you had just mentioned, where it's basically about solving problems and getting compensated a proportional amount relative to the problems that you're actually solving, and making people feel like pretty good along the way to getting their problems.
Which is how it should be, right? Like, to your point, like, getting away from that is a 2008 bubble. It's a Ponzi scheme. Like, it's bullshit. Like, that should never have happened. Yeah.
It should never have happened, but the fact that it did happen allows us to kind of like appreciate why real work even like matters in the first place. Like, now we'll probably appreciate the humble potato farmer,
right?
Because it's like, it's nice to have potatoes available to you.
Well, we were talking about that, funny enough, talking about Japan, how like in Japan, like, you can walk into these like little towns and find like a potato farmer who is like, he's been a potato farmer for 50 years and he's fucking dedicated to like the perfection, and he has so much respect and status amongst the village, and there's so much like pride for like true mastery of a useful like, you know, it's like,
it's
like
a
the
real
bonsai
job, you know, like, we need to eat, and potatoes are super satiating, you know. Like, that's so to get at like the root of what you're asking for is that I truly, truly do not believe that it has to come from some Slavic existential crisis, psychic torment, and having to go through like all 13 layers of like Dante's Inferno, and then come back down and be like, the universities are bullshit. We need to like, you know, sell like supplements. You know, it doesn't have to be so dire and so existential and so paranoid. It can quite literally be just as simple as every single person out there has something where they have a natural proclivity towards, that they're naturally gifted in, that's fun for them to do, which is why you and I always, you know, talk about the idea like, lean into the thing that naturally comes to you, where if like you woke up that morning and it's like the thing that you would just want to read about, the thing that you would want to talk about, like what we're talking about here today, the thing that you would want to build and share with other people, is a very childlike sentiment to be in, right? Like if we all just went to some fucking kindergarten, it's like, what would I want to do today? And figuring out a way of being able to monetize that so that
Mm-hmm.
you're able to just have your basic needs taken care of, which, as we were alluding to earlier, especially when you're playing with like the high 6-figure, low 7-figure revenues and incomes, it's like
Mm-hmm.
in these cities, and so like there's even an upper limit to that. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
living, you know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Bezos, you and I. There's only so like he's not eating any better of like a hamburger than you and I have like access
Right.
to. Like the best hamburger in the world costs like $120.
Right.
You know, so it if you're being reasonable and you're not going into excess just for excess's sake, you can live like a pretty phenomenal life from the perspective of like our ancestors who had
Mm-hmm.
to like really go through like grueling
Mm-hmm.
trial and toil and these material
Yeah, we're not
pre-industrial.
scrubbing fucking chimneys at coal
Yeah,
plants.
right. Exactly. All you have to do is find a thing that you're good at and build it, make it, or share it, or do something for another person and put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got to play the game, right? Like
You got
that's
to play
kind
the
of what
game.
we're talking about. Like because obviously, right? So somebody could hear this, and devil's advocate would be like, "Yeah, must be nice. I want to like buy a house and raise kids, and I'm not doing that as a fucking potato farmer." It's like, do you know if somebody started a TikTok series like documenting growing their first, like if like this like Zoomer fucking kid, like like zero agriculture, born and raised in a city suburb, was like, I'm going to grow my first ever potato like in my a 1-bedroom apartment, like fucking kitchen sink, right?
Right.
And like document the journey on like growing his first potato. Dude, that would go fucking nuclear. Like, like I
Yeah,
can see those,
it
like
would.
I know what that looks
And then
like.
going to farmers markets
Uh-huh.
and then making connections with other
Mm-hmm.
people in the industry and the domain and and etc. Yeah, it's all out there. You just
And then
have
he
to.
works with like a marketing asshole like me, and I launch a course on like homesteading in urban cities, which would fucking print.
Yes.
And then then you're making 190 grand a month teaching people how to like start micro farms in their apartment. Like I'm
Yeah.
literally gonna go fucking launch that after this call. Like it's right. Like you got to play the game. You
Yeah.
can't. Again, it's what we're saying. It's like you can't have that victim
Because this
mentality.
is the world that we were born into.
Yes. Yes.
Right, and it's like 100 years ago, if you and I were at our local pub and we were talking about like Riley Velati, like how are we gonna like make money so that we can take care of our children, we would be
Mm-hmm.
talking about like going to work at a factory or um joining like the military and going through promotions and gaining prestige and um gravitas and through there and making something of yourself. That's literally every person that is born into any generation has a unique set of circumstances that they
Yes.
just have to recognize and then make the most of it. And I argue and will continue to argue that we are born in the absolute best of times in
Yes.
terms of sheer uh, input time to output ratios that exist.
Fully agree.
Things used to take decades for you to be able to
Mm-hmm.
establish what we would call generational wealth today, that maybe only the ancestors of our past could start to materially realize maybe only through their grandkids or great grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
But us today, like it's a completely different story. I mean, you can literally like quote unquote break free from the matrix, as
Mm-hmm.
um, ridiculous as that sounds, like within a matter of years.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Which like
sorry, inflation's
everyone,
bad,
yeah,
but we don't have the bubonic plague. Like, things aren't that fucking bad. So when do you think the Ponzi scheme started? Was it like Fordism, or was it more like, because the Ponzi scheme is fun? Like, I think the underlying reason for this Ponzi scheme is like kind of what I said earlier, which is the general census of like, must be nice if I could be a potato farmer and afford to raise a family, I would, but I can't. I need to go work one of these like tech office jobs, and
Mhm.
so that would like probably have started technically like when we came off the gold standard. But like, when do you think it officially like started? Because you can blame consumerism on consumers if you want. There's like an argument there for, again, like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, is it these like evil corporations, or is it like people asking for it? Like TikTok is addicting you to your phone, where people are like asking for better algorithms, right? But so like,
Mhm.
do you think it started out of like quote necessity, where because of like economic decisions and the way the economy went, that people were like, well, if I want any chance at like living in a tier 2 city and raising a family, I need to work one of these bullshit jobs? Or do you think it was earlier, and like the actual when people stopped being directly impactful and started being impactful in this like an important cog in a machine?
Yeah, it's really really difficult to pinpoint, but I think we're going to get that answer in retrospect. Like
Mm,
hindsight is always kind of 2020,
mm-hmm.
but I think there was a point where we basically solved productivity.
Yeah.
And this is super super interesting. I remember reading Max Tegmark's Life 3.0, and it's this. I think Max Tegmark is a um, computer science and artificial intelligence researcher from MIT, if I'm not mistaken. And his original field of study was physics, which I think, as you know, is like one of the most like mind-bending fields that you can get into, especially kind of like experimental physics of
Yeah,
just like
like you don't need to be right.
yeah, and like you can be wrong, and that's like right, yeah, yeah. And he had a very interesting point in that book where he talked about how um, during the decades where it was very commonplace to just be an assembly line worker at like a Ford factory where you're manufacturing automobiles. You're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of employees, because that's literally what it took to build a car
Mm,
that could last 5, 10, 15 years. And those factory workers would all get pretty wealthy over the duration of just a standard industrial worker laborer's career. Um, using like connotatively the word wealthy as in they can own a property, raise a family, and off of like one single income, and send their kids off to universities that they probably weren't able to have access to in their generation. So there's this the idea of social class mobility still existed during that era,
mm-hmm.
and that was kind of like in the mindset of modern or Americans during that era. That was kind of the mindset that they were operating underneath. Now, what's interesting is he compared that to the 90s and early 2000s, where when you start going into these technology companies, like a Google, for example, or an Apple, you're talking about maybe dozens to hundreds of individuals that can create billions of dollars worth of assets and value relative to not even 40, 50 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where we're talking about figures in the thousands upon thousands to create like a car. And that was the, number one um, company and industry at the time, Ford, as an example. So as we've evolved and as we've progressed, particularly through a post-industrialized society, it takes less and less people to create absolutely paradigm shifting innovations.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that even being even more true now with something like a NVIDIA and everything that's happening with AI products today. You don't need millions of AI researchers
Mm-hmm.
to create like the actual products and services that they're creating today. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, tried to hire away uh, a guy from OpenAI to Meta for $1 billion earlier this year. I think earlier this month, if I'm not mistaken. An AI researcher. One guy, Mark Zuckerberg said, I will give you $1 billion to leave OpenAI and come work for Meta, to be a part of like the forefront of AI development and innovation. And so that's kind of like what it boils down to. Even when Elon took over Twitter a
Mm-hmm.
year and a half ago or 2 years ago or however long it's been now, he fired like 30-40% of the workforce, and Twitter worked just
On day
fine
one.
on day one. Yeah. Or what happened with Doge, right? When Trump took office and Elon came in, and they basically just started to sift through. I think it was like the Department of Governmental Efficiency was what that acronym had stood for.
Yeah.
And they came in and just went through all of the various cabinets and departments um, that were underneath the federal government, and was like, yeah, we're paying all of these people these salaries, and they're literally just logging on and doing
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fuck all. And there's maybe a half dozen or 2 dozen individuals within each respective department that are actually like doing anything that creates value. So we are rapidly barreling towards like a post labor society
Mm-hmm.
where the things that will become valuable to us are completely different than what they were 10 to 20 years ago to 60 and 70 years ago when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about those automobile assembly line workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is all honestly for the best.
I agree.
Like I just have a hard time in general, I guess, being pessimistic about anything because everything always seems to kind of like work out in the end. But I think again, where if you and I, for example, were born in Detroit, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
or you could have been born in Canada and then like moved over as a U.S. national, worked in like a Ford factory. It would have taken us, you and I, 30 years of grueling assembly line labor to be able to have a home, family, send our kids to higher institutions of education. Today, you and I can build a company that offers legitimate value, and it doesn't even have to be brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
It can be entirely built off of subscriptions to miscellaneous softwares that all cost like $15-20 a month, and in 12 to 18, 24 months um, be set for the next 5, 10, 20 years, and
Mm-hmm.
and move on to the next project. Isn't that a gift?
Do
That's
you
insane
talk to
to
your
me.
parents about this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Like, what do they think? Because it's so interesting to me how optimistic you are. Because, like, like a typical Slavic parent
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
looking at current society and being like, fooled me once, get fucked. Fooled me twice. Like, what are we doing here? And that's obviously what you were like grown up and like indoctrinated into, right?
Right.
Is this like this natural, not necessarily pessimism, just like overall
A lot of
critical
cynicism.
thinking.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right,
Low trust. Always have your guard up.
right.
Be prepared to be fucked over, and you're gonna have to work. You're gonna have to put in 200% of the inputs just to get
Yes,
50% of the outputs, because there's so much corruption and waste
yes.
and subversion in all of these institutions around, which is
Right.
what
And
the
it's like
Soviet Union
bottom
was.
down, like they want to keep you down. And the first, like, what, 25 years of your life, like, reflected that externally.
Yeah.
Maybe if you were starting to shift towards an optimistic viewpoint internally, like on the surface, you were playing like offensive defense. Like you
Hmm.
were putting in the work now to future proof yourself for when the inevitability that we get fucked and go to like Marxism again, that you're like safe and protected and can like, so like how do you go from that, which is all like valid critiques, right? Because
It
like
is,
it
because
happened.
it happened. Yeah, those things did happen. I
So
mean,
do
you
you
can
need to have a
literally
sense of
watch
delusion?
you can literally watch the HBO series Chernobyl today.
Yeah.
My parents and I didn't grow up that far away from Chernobyl.
Hmm.
Like, life is so strange and so crazy. Like, there's physical photographs of me with, like, hooked up to all of these machines. I look like something out of, like, that movie, like Akira. Like, there's these wires, and
Yeah.
I have this breathing mask on because I'm like so sick as a kid because of the nuclear fallout from Chernobyl and the windfall that was coming into um, Kiev in the even into the mid and late 90s, and that was like a big motivating factor for why my parents wanted to uh, move, was just because, like, like, even like my health was,
Hmm.
just suffering, and everybody. In any case, the point being that once you have seen it once, like, you just can't kind of like unsee it. And I understand from my parents' perspective, growing up in the Soviet Union in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that it was filled to the brim with corruption, waste, extortion, exploitation, subversion. But you and I, in our respective entrepreneurial journeys, both in what we have experienced at the ground floor of things that we've been building for the past year and a half, 2 years, and from our contemporaries, as it were, people that are kind of like close to our inner circle of the things that we've seen them build. It's like, I can't deny that either,
Right.
like, and these are just, kids that are no brighter or um, no more capable than you or myself or anybody else that we come across that has the inkling or the aspiration to try to make something of themselves in this
Hmm.
self-sufficient fashion. Um, and they just slowly but surely figured out how to use the tools, the platforms, the circumstances, and the
Hmm.
contexts that we all exist within right now
Yes.
to make something that, from what we have seen, the things that actually have staying power are legitimately, genuinely valuable,
Hmm.
right? It's like uh, going back to some of the things that we mentioned about, like, um, Dan Co, or like what Nick
Hmm.
Rogers was doing with Launch Socials, or even going back to PewDiePie as an example. It's like these people all made something with staying power because, legitimately, at the end of the funnel of all the people that funded or purchased, like, the product or service, got some actual legitimate use out of it.
Hmm.
And that, to me, is super inspiring, because it just goes to show you that as long as you're creating something of value, as long as you are actually legitimately solving a problem, and the market will tell you what problems it has, then you just make a ton of money, and then you hand off the baton to the next generation,
Yep.
right? Of all the kids that are coming up beneath us that are 5, 10 years younger than us, and our kids that we'll eventually have, of like, this is what this is what we learned. Like, we
Yep.
saw fake bullshit email jobs
Hmm.
in the modern West, and the fake bullshit nonsense that was going on in the Soviet Union that my parents
Hmm.
grew up in from the mid to late 20th century. And we saw what was emerging in now going into the first quarter of the 21st century, um, actual opportunities to cut through all of that, and you can make something on your own, and the barrier of entry has never been ever been lower than it is right now. Like, you
Yep.
don't need any credentials, anyone's permission, to just go on YouTube, create an account, and start teaching people something about something that you've developed real life expertise in over the course of the last like decade, 2 decades.
Yep. I
And
fully
that's
agree.
like insane. Like, to
It's,
me, that
dude,
we're
so
like
insane.
in this timeline, that we can even do such a thing or even talk about things.
Yeah, I think that right there is the anecdote to what we've been talking about, right? Like I remember when I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 maybe, and I was first getting into the space, I saw a video from Sam Ovens that was literally like, if you're in your 20s, here are like 7 things you need to focus on. I forget what it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And his first tip was that good business ideas don't come to you in the shower. It's a myth. Good business ideas come to you, like you said, when you identify a problem and solve it. And that is like a huge part of this kind of like Ponzi scheme delusion, right? Because back in the day, if you were starting a business, it's like the fucking shoe cobbler is like old and everyone's walking around with fucked up shoes. So I'm
Yes,
going to
yes,
apprentice under him and I'm going to like
yes.
solve everyone's shoe. Like I'm going to fix people's
I'm
shoes. Like,
a problem.
yeah, that's how it fucking works. And then somewhere, because like I remember when I was in high school and I was like starting to apply to colleges, I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And everyone was like, well, good fucking luck. Because the typical, like, what the boomer generation thinks of entrepreneurship is like sitting like Rick Rubin until like this divine inspiration idea comes. Like, they think that, like, Uber or Airbnb, these like unicorn startups, were like this miraculous idea. Meanwhile, like Airbnb was literally like there was a conference in the guys' hometowns. The hotels were booked out. They blew up some air
Mm-hmm.
mattresses and hosted it. That's why it's called Airbnb, because they started as an air
Air
mattress bed
mattress.
and breakfast. And 10 years later, like it's right, like it's solving a fundamental problem. And I don't know whether that was like an intentional thing that happened over the past like 15, 20 years or just a byproduct of the delusion, but somehow we lost sense of solve a problem. You get paid into proportion of value that you provide for a society, right? And we take it one step further. Like true entrepreneurs, true innovators, Steve Jobs, for example, is solving a problem the market doesn't know it needs solved yet. It's
Mm-hmm.
still solving a problem. It's rooted in delusion and it's rooted in inspiration and it's rooted in being a visionary, but it's not detached from reality. Like, you're still solving this problem. It's like a fundamental pain point. And it's
Correct.
so crazy to me. Like, did you have that growing up too? Like, entrepreneurs were like these fucking like delusional whiz kids that I always thought entrepreneurship was like physical products, It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna like invent this like thing and it's like this new thing and everyone's gonna use it and I'm gonna get rich. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's fucking it's delusion. Like, so I think the pendulum's swinging back hard, and I think when we enter this generation where kids are coming out of high school and the question isn't where are you going to go to school and get a job, the question is what problem are you going to solve for society. And if the answer is open heart surgeries, well, you're going to go to school for 8 to 12 years, you're going to become a fucking heart surgeon and you're going to make 400 grand a year. You're going to like great, but it's not rooted in like that's the thing to do. It's rooted in like what problem are you going to solve. And like I've shared this with you and it's something that we are working on in the background for kind of this like 5 to 10 year play on like this return to the apprenticeship model, which is like if you want to do something, go learn from someone who's good at it. That's why I dropped out of school. I remember that's when I started like consuming this, like the fucking make money online slop. And it was like, don't take advice from people that, you wouldn't want to trade lives with or whatever.
Yes,
but yes. I remember sitting in classroom I was like, I've been watching Iman Gaji for like 4 months. So like, I'm a marketing wizard, right? Like I'm fucking Ogilvy. Like I'm on Madison Avenue. I'm a pro. And I'm sitting in my like advertising class with this like woman professor like teaching to me. And I'm like, what advertising have you done?
Exactly.
And she's like, well, I've studied advertising for 4 years. And I'm like, have you ran an ad? Yes. Do you not know how like it, yes. And I literally like fucking walked out and I was like, what are we doing? Like it's Ponzi. It's just fucking delusion. Yes. And so what happens when we return to you're able to provide for your family for providing value? Well, humanity stops turning against each other and we actually go back to this like place of flourishing. If it is more likely for you to create wealth by helping people than it is just taking a salary from this bullshit data siphoning company. Like humans aren't fundamentally rooted in like evil. They're just, again, I think it's out of necessity. I think it's like, well, I would love to help people, but that doesn't pay the bills. And so what happens when it's like, actually it does pay the bills? Well, then you have all these people walking around like fucking philanthropists, like trying to help each other, right? And we're getting a sense of that here. The deeper I get into the business world, the more you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It is like there are sharks, there is competition, but generally speaking, it's like you can either try to increase your size of the pie, which means you need to decrease somebody else's, or you can grow the pie overall and both of your slices grow.
Correct. Rising tide raises all boats.
Yes.
Which is what makes our journey particularly fun because, again, it's like the only competition that we have truly are like grifters and scammers.
Yeah.
People that are trying to pull the wool over your eyes and not actually deliver any legitimate value. They're trying to use various methodologies of doublespeak to convince you that they're going to give you value, but they're actually trying to just recreate the Ponzi scheme that we're talking about with all of these traditional institutions that got us into these problems in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that is really, really fun competition to have.
Yeah.
It's different when it's like you and I both want to do some real good in the world and like maybe only one of us can win. But it's like, it's different when I want to do some good in the world and I know this guy next to me doesn't. It's like, yeah, I'm excited to curb stomp that guy. Like if there's that hilarious meme from like 15 years ago, it's not enough that I must win. It's like you must also lose. It's like I'm excited for the parasites to lose. Like that's gonna be awesome too, because to your point, and even going back to like things that you had in university, and I had the exact same thing. I was in business school classes learning from professors that had not only never run a business, but were never even employed by real businesses. They were lifelong academics. So they learned like business theory to be able to teach business theory. And it's like, what are we even?
Again, if I did that in an info product, if I watched a YouTube tutorial on how to run Facebook ads and then launched a program on how to run Facebook ads
without ever having run a Facebook ad,
not only would you call me a grifter, the FTC would knock on my fucking door.
That's like that's what our universities are. They're filled to the brim with lifelong academics that have never done a single actual boots on the ground, hands on the keys, knees in the trenches work in any of the fields or domains that they're acclaimed experts in. So when we talk about something like education and the market gap that exists within there, and the 5-10 year plan that you and I have been discussing of actually teaching the emerging generations, but teaching them from a place of real lived experience and that apprenticeship model again. Hey, I'm a shoe cobbler. I've been fixing this village's shoes for decades now. Come learn how to fix shoes under me. And that's the value that you're going to be able to provide to the world, and you're going to be able to sustain a family off of that. That's what we are returning to, but in our own unique way. Obviously, we're
Mhm.
not fixing shoes here. We're getting to work on a lot more exciting and creative and abstract problems too. Um, but that's essentially what's happening here,
Mhm.
and it's like that's awesome. Like
That's fucking so
it's
awesome.
so cool, and I'm super excited. Like I wake up every single day and I don't even go to bed every night because I can't fall asleep because I'm so excited about like thinking about all of the things that we are going to get to work on in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, because it is just so rife with opportunity and frustration from people that have all arrived at the same conclusions that you and I are talking about today. And to be able to enable and empower those people is a life worth living, and it's a life worth spending, and it's like a life worth dying for what our generation has been born into. So it's just great. Like I don't know what else more I could have asked for than to be born in this exact time and place to be able to do this exact sort of thing.